How's it going, guys? It's Kevin. I'm back. Super sorry that's taking me this long to make a video. It's a beautiful day here, which is why I'm thinking about you guys. The reason why it took me so long is because I've been doing a lot of traveling and speaking at different events, and don't worry, I've captured all of that content, so expect a new YouTube video right after this one. It's gonna be a little bit different from the standard e-commerce stuff, but I think you guys are gonna really enjoy it. Of course, for this particular video, we're gonna be talking about, as you guys demanded, CBO strategy for 2020. I spent a lot of time and a lot of money testing this to make sure that you guys are prepared. Right now on all my ad accounts, CBO hasn't been mandatory yet, but it's looking like eventually everyone's gonna have mandatory CBO, so I wanna make sure that you're prepared. If your ad account is not mandatory CBO right now, I still recommend using that spider web approach in order to generate good data and get good results. If you're already on mandatory CBO, well, this video is perfect for you. So right now, I'm still using non-CBO strategies primarily because my ad accounts haven't switched over, but I'm gonna be prepared once they do switch over. So why is this whole CBO thing going on? And sorry about the construction noise, I'm gonna call it out right now. My neighbors are basically revamping their house. Everyone is trying to flex on me. That means I gotta put in some more work on my e-commerce business. And also, you guys better be hustling too, because this guy up there, he's making moves. His crib was already fat and it just got a whole lot fatter. So why is Facebook making CBOs mandatory? Well, you have to understand what's going on in the world of digital advertising. Facebook is approaching this part of their Power 5 movement, which is a whole movement of making their advertising platform a lot more intuitive and easy to use, especially for new businesses or people that are inexperienced with digital ad strategy, all right? The thing that Facebook hates the most is people like me teaching people like you how to hack the algorithm. Of course, with CBOs, it's not perfect yet. Facebook thinks you won't be able to hack it, but that's where I'm here for, and I have totally hacked it. I'm gonna share that with you and also explain what the Power 5 really is all about. But in order to do that, we gotta get out of this open air and this wonderfulness and get into the office to start learning. A lot of you guys that follow me on social media might be thinking that all day I'm just doing crazy stuff, I'm traveling all the time, but no, most days is exactly like this one. We're gonna be going into the office right now. This is where I spend most of my time. There's my sneakers right there. We're just gonna be grinding usually all day here. Obviously a lot of good light. We've got basketballs here to remind us who the champions are, and we're working on a tactical brand that we're launching in May that's gonna be very exciting. But for this video, it's obviously all about CBO, so let's dive right in. The first thing that we have to understand is Facebook's Power 5 and how CBOs fit into all of this. So what is Facebook's Power 5? Well, I took this directly from their website. The days of manually hacking your way to ad success are no more. Oh my gosh, no more. Too bad. That is exactly what I'm here to do, to teach you how to hack your way to advertising success. But of course, this is a part of Facebook's efforts to make their platform easier to use for new advertisers and just to make it more automated. They believe in their algorithm that much. I'm going to be reviewing each aspect of Facebook's Power 5 and giving you my thoughts on it. And the first one is called Auto Advanced Matching. And this is actually something that is very powerful. And this came about even before Power 5. So this is something that gets my stamp of approval. What Auto Advanced Matching does is increases the number of attributed conversions. So ad manager is going to start recording more sales. And also it's going to increase the sizes of custom audiences. And finally, it should decrease the cost per conversion and get you a higher ROAS because you are collecting more data. And all this did is essentially Facebook set up more customer identifiers to directly pinpoint where customers are coming from and what they are doing on your store. So this is a no-brainer to implement, and I'm going to go ahead and teach you how you can implement in the easiest way right now. Here I am in Facebook Ad Manager, and all you have to do is go into your pixels. So all you do is click up here, and then you're going to go into all tools, and underneath here you're going to see pixels, and you're going to get to a screen just like this one. And once you are on here, all you have to do is go into the details of your pixel over here, right? And what we're gonna do is go into settings, And now I'm going to scroll to the bottom of settings and you'll see here automatic advanced matching. All you have to do is press the on button and bam, auto advanced matching is turned on. Check mark. That is a great use of Power 5. If you are not doing this right now, it's something that you should do as soon as possible in order to boost the performance of your Facebook ads. But let's go on to number 2. The next thing we got to talk about is simplified account structure, okay? And what this means, it's very, very intuitive. A long time ago, how most people were setting up their accounts, right, is with having a lot of campaigns. So imagine if these rectangles are campaigns, you're having a lot of different ad sets, a lot of different campaigns, and attached to every single ad set, you're having a lot of different creatives, right? That's what Facebook determines as a very, very messy campaign structure. So what it wants you to do is to minimize the amount of campaigns that you have, and then minimize the amount of ad sets that you have within each campaign, and also minimize the amount of creatives that you are also running, and use more of their smart kind of algorithm driven tools. Now, what do I think about simplified campaign structure? Because I am such a proponent of ABO, and because I can still use ABO, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a no. Now, I'm going to qualify that, right? I think once you get a lot of data onto your pixel and onto your ad manager, a simplified account structure really does work because you're moving onto broad targeting. When your pixel is so good that it can go for a very broad audience and pinpoint exactly the type of person that is likely to buy from your business, a simplified account structure really does work. The problem is I don't think that it is the best way to start, and I don't think that it is the best way to build data. Like I said, if CBO isn't mandatory, you should still be on Spiderweb. Simplified account structure is something that we haven't really adapted to unless it's for very, very mature ad accounts that have spent millions in dollars in advertising. At least 5,000 purchases recorded or more is when we even start simplifying things. But for now, I'm going to say that this is kind of bogus advice from Facebook. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ignore that. So let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is actually CBO. So this is where it all comes together, is in that CBO. Remember, this is one component of the Power 5. So what about CBOs? What's so different from them compared to ABOs? Well, I'm just going to go over it briefly. You can do more research on your own. Essentially, in ABO, you can determine the budget at the ad set level. This time, with a CBO, you are setting the budget at the campaign level and then trusting Facebook's algorithm to allocate spend effectively in all of the ad sets that you have under the CBO. Now, there's also other guidelines or requirements for CBO, so make sure you read up on them, but that's kind of a cursory view. Essentially, Facebook is saying, hey, I can make better budgeting decisions than a skilled media buyer. I'm still in disagreement of this, all right? I think there's a great time to use CBOs, which is when I use it later on in the journey when my pixel has more data. But for now, if your account is mandatory CBO, don't worry, I'm going to share some effective CBO strategies for you. But if it isn't, I'm going to go ahead and veto this one. And Mark Zuckerberg, if you are watching this video, make your platform better, make CBOs a lot more effective and a lot smarter, and I'm going to turn into a believer. The reason why I think CBOs haven't become mandatory for everyone just yet is because CBO technology isn't where it needs to be, where they can forcibly mandate a lot of the biggest media buyers and biggest agencies and biggest brands out there to switch over to CBO, because a lot of really skilled digital ad strategists, especially people in my community, the shakedown is usually 80% ABO and 20% CBO, depending on who you talk to. So that's number 3, and I put a veto in there. We've got auto placements, all right? And this is very intuitive. Essentially, on Facebook, you can control where your ads are actually placed in, right? Whether it's Facebook newsfeed or mobile newsfeed, it's a drag down that you can actually control. But when you pick auto placement, it gives Facebook's algorithm a chance to try out all of their different platforms, all of their advertising mediums, and then slowly funnel all of the budget into whatever medium does the best, right? And auto placement is very, very powerful. And even with the spiderweb method, I also encourage auto placement. So I'm going to give Facebook a green check mark for this. I definitely advocate using auto placement unless you know that your creative format is really suitable only for one of the platforms. For example, if you're shooting a vertical style selfie ad, maybe the best placement is Facebook stories, Messenger stories, and Instagram stories. You probably don't need an algorithm to help you figure that out because the dimensions of your video is not going to look too hot on Facebook newsfeed, right? Or on desktop. So only in situations where you have made a particular type of creative that only thrives on a certain placement, that's the only time you should move away from auto placements. Or if you've accumulated a lot of data and based on that data, you can see which placements are better for your business and then you can kind of take that manual control. But starting day one, and honestly even on most of my mature ad accounts, I am definitely using auto placements for the targeting level. The final and fifth component of Power 5 is going to be dynamic ads, okay? And basically what Facebook is telling us is, hey, stop refreshing your creatives like normal. Stop taking so much control in the types of advertising and the types of creatives that you're using. Instead, use a dynamic catalog. Essentially, a dynamic catalog, and I talk about this when I talked about retargeting in one of my previous lessons, a dynamic catalog is when Facebook's algorithm essentially detects what customers or visitors are looking at onto your website, and then it can retarget them based on the items that they looked at. So you're essentially taking the creative responsibilities away from yourself, right? Away from your creative team, and now letting the algorithm just funnel in the products and showing those products in a carousel format to the potential customer. Now, what do I think about this? I'm definitely give it a no. Now, dynamic catalogs and dynamic creatives can be very, very powerful in retargeting, but with cold traffic, I just haven't found good enough results. And creatives, at the end of the day, I think content is what drives sales. Creatives are one of the most important aspects of your e-commerce business, right? If the ad strategist is like a race car driver, I think the creatives are the race car that you are actually driving. No matter how good you are at ad strategy, if you're driving a Toyota Camry, how can you ever beat a Ferrari? So I think content is king in e-commerce and anything in the world of digital entrepreneurship, and I don't like sacrificing that control to Facebook just yet. So here you saw my take on the Power 5. I believe in auto advanced matching. I also believe in auto placements. I think simplified campaign structures work very, very well once you accumulated a lot of data and are moving towards broader and broader targeting. Not so well when you start. I think CBOs work very well as well when you've accumulated a lot of data and your pixel is very mature. But again, also not my favorite thing to start out with an ad account. And also finally, with the dynamic creatives, I think they're very, very good. Dynamic catalogs are awesome when it comes to retargeting, but not the best with cold traffic. So we're going to take 2 out of the 5 of the power play. But of course, you came into this video to learn the CBO strategy that I believe in most right now, and I'm about to break it down. My CBO strategy has 3 stages to it. There's going to be an early stage, which is when you have less than 200 purchases recorded on Ad Manager, and at this point, your LAAs are probably not that powerful. There's going to be a middle stage, which was when you unlocked LAAs, right, above 200 purchase events. And also there's going to be a final stage, which is going to be 5,000 recorded purchases or more. So these 3 stages are going to be a part of my CBO strategy. Let's dive in the first early stage. And remember, I'm carrying over a lot of the principles I've talked about in previous videos. So make sure you've brushed up on all of that stuff and watch the spiderweb video, even if CBOs are mandatory for you, because it teaches a lot of the principles that I use to make decisions right up in here. And at the end of the day, that's what ad strategy is all about. Adhering to principles and also not being afraid to deviate on them depending on situation. But again, this is all about a framework to help you think. So what is the campaign budget that you should be setting for your CBOs? All right. And I've got a very simple equation for you. All you're going to do, and remember, in a CBO, the campaign is where you set the budget at, and then Facebook's algorithm determines how to allocate that budget at the ad set level. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take the number of ad sets within a particular campaign, and I recommend this number to be at least 3. All right. You don't really want to start Facebook ads on day 1 if you don't even have enough money based on this rule to run more than 3 ad sets. So you're going to take number of ad sets. You're going to multiply that number by the number of creatives per ad set, okay? And this will ring some bells if you've seen my previous videos. And then you're going to multiply this thing out, all right? This is where it gets a little different, by $10. Remember, previously on ABO, it was $5. This time, it's going to be $10 because CBOs are extra data thirsty. That's one of the biggest observations that I've made, is that CBOs require a lot more data to get good performance and start learning, and it makes sense. You're taking the job away from yourself as the ad strategist and giving it more to Facebook's algorithm. So let's go ahead and do this equation. So what is like the minimum CBO budget someone should be starting out on? Well, you're going to take 3 ad sets, okay? And you're going to multiply by the number of creatives, which should at the minimum be 3. And then you're going to multiply that by $10. So this all feeds into being 9 times 10, $90. So if you want to start running Facebook ads day one, you should spend at least $90 in daily budget, all right? And that is the equation on how you determine the budget level for your campaign. And remember, this is the minimum threshold, okay? Of course, you can have more ad sets. Of course, you can give each ad set a higher budget when you're thinking about your overall campaign budget, but this is the exact minimum. I start out sometimes $1,000 a day on the first day, but I have a lot more capital to work with, and that's because I want to get to the right answer quicker, okay? This is kind of a paradigm shift when it comes to Facebook ad strategy that a lot of beginners struggle with. When you spend more on Facebook, you're not necessarily losing money. All you're doing is you're buying information, okay? For example, if you plug in an interest and it doesn't really work out, it's not like you wasted money. You learned that interest doesn't work. And chances are, if you didn't spend money on that interest today, you eventually would have spent money on that interest down the road, right? So it's not really like you're losing money. It's more of like you're losing money that would have been lost anyways. Now, the one exception to this rule, when is it actually losing money, is when your site is actually crap. Remember, it's about the products, about the website, about the targeting, and the creatives. If your website sucks, okay, or if your products are just not very much aligned with the brand that you're trying to execute, or if your creatives are absolutely trash, that is when you waste money because the data you're getting isn't even very accurate data. So make sure as the beginner, you don't hesitate to spend money on Facebook if you're sure that the other 3 criterias are pretty well mapped out, and also make sure that if you're a beginner that you're not just blasting budget when you know your website isn't really where it needs to be. But that's kind of a mindset shift I want you guys to start adapting when it comes to decision making of how much budget you're going to give yourself daily on Facebook. So that's the minimum campaign budget equation. Now let's go into the scaling window. So I scale on a 7-day view, okay, and I like to cut on a 3-day view. And what is the metrics I determine scale? Well, hey, if it's at least breaking even, meaning the cost per purchase is at least at breaking even, I'm going to give it some scale, and I'll teach you how to scale a CBO. Now, in terms of cutting, how do I like to cut? And I've gone over this before in my previous videos. I want to make sure that everything has spent at least 3 days. Basically, in the first 3 days, I'm not making any changes unless, again, you're very, very concerned about the quality of your creatives or the quality of your products or the quality of your website, which in that case, you shouldn't have started advertising anyway. So I make sure everything spends for at least 3 days and also at least 2 times the cost per purchase that I am targeting, okay? And that is obviously based on your average order value and your margin. Now, the attribution window. The attribution window I use is 7-day click or 1-day view, all right? And that's the attribution window I was also using before. So how does all of this kind of boil down? What does this actually look like when you take action? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clear this canvas now, and we're going to talk about how you actually scale, how you actually test. So there's going to be 2 types of campaigns within this early stage, and also this principle is going to carry out. There's going to be a testing campaign, and this is what you're going to start out with, all right? And I hate it when this board does that, so there it is. So let's just say this thing is one massive campaign, all right? And I hope these shapes are intuitive way of conceptualizing this Facebook ad strategy. So this thing is the testing campaign. So you're going to be testing interest, all right? And what does an ad set look like within this campaign? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to find an interest, And this is kind of the ad set. And you're going to make sure you're going to have 3 creatives in this ad set. And what types of creatives do I recommend? A diverse array. So I like having a still image creative. I like having a slideshow creative. And again, these creatives are all things I teach you how to make in my previous YouTube videos, and also a carousel creative. So that's what each ad set is looking like within this campaign. And you can also add video to the mix, but again, that gives you 4 creatives, which kind of changes that equation. So let's just say that we are going to have 5 ad sets. Well, what types of interest should we plug in? In the ABO approach, it didn't really matter. You go out and determine your own interest. On CBO, I actually found that you need to kind of shake it up. And this is the golden rule of how you determine interest. And again, this is just for the testing campaign. For every 4 interests, all right, and this is a ratio, for every 4 interests that you have, with an audience size above 200,000, I never test interests that are below 200,000 in audience, okay? And below 100 million in audience, okay? So this is what we're gonna call standard interest. For every 4 of these, you're gonna have one that is going to be broad. You're going to have one broad interest or type of ad set, something you can target, okay? That is going to be above 100 million in audience size. This is going to be your broad. All right. And why is this really, really important? Why is it good to have this ratio? Well, I noticed that this really improves performance. And the reason is because CBOs are so data thirsty, where even though in the early days of an ad account on an ABO situation, I would never recommend running broader targeting, on a CBO, it can actually really help out. So you have a balance of 4 kind of nicher, more tailored targeted interests, and also one broader one. And what do I mean by niche and broader ones? I'm actually just going to show you within my own ad manager. So here we are in ad manager, and I'll show you what I mean by kind of standard interest versus the broader one. So let's say we are selling athleisure. So let's try to find some athleisure related interests like gym. You can see right here, World Gym has 4 million in size. That's a standard interest. Gym memes, 4 million in size. That's a standard interest. So what are some examples of broader ones? Well, engaged shoppers is one. This is basically people that tend to buy more often than others. And again, it's very broad because you don't know what they're buying. But again, that's 400 million population. That's going to be a broad one. All right. Another one could be online shopping. So let's see online shopping. I bet it's going to be pretty massive. There you go. Over 1 billion. So for every 4 standard interests, you're going to be plugging in one broader one. And now let's go back to the whiteboard. We're going to still fantasize that we're selling athleisure, right? And let's just say these are our interests. So we need 4 basic ones and also 1 broader ones. And again, this is only that ratio. So if you have 10 ad sets, you're going to have 8 and 2, right? If you're running 3 ad sets, you don't really have to worry about the broad one just yet. But let's just say these are the interests that we're going to be rolling with. One interest is going to be called gym, right? This one is going to be gym memes. Let's just say another one is just going to be P90X. That was a very popular program that I used to really like when I was working out back in the day in high school. And now let's just say another one is just going to be dumbbell. All right. And I don't know if these are real interests. I'm just going to give you examples. Let's say our broad one is going to be engaged shoppers. Okay. And now you're going to be running these. All right. And remember, what is this campaign budget looking like at the minimum? We're going to assume we have 3 creatives in each ad set. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the number of ad sets, right? That's 5 ad sets to determine budget. That's what we're determining here. All right. So we're going to take 5 ad sets and we're going to multiply that. I'm using red for multiplication, that by 3 creatives within each ad set. All right. And we're going to multiply that number by $10, and that gives us a budget of 5 times 3 is 15, 15 times 10 is $150. So this whole campaign has a budget of $150. Now, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to be talking about cutting first, okay? Remember the criteria. 3 days and also 2 times spent. But there's different types of cutting that's going to take place at the CBO level now, which is going to be a little bit different than before. And what do I mean by that? All right. So let's just go ahead and we're going to draw out the campaign again, because this is where it kind of gets very, very interesting. And this is where CBOs make some mistakes where we have to go in and do some manual adjustments. So we're going to keep those same ad sets. I'm just going to call this 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then that purple one, all right, that broader one, we're going to call it 5. So 3 days has passed. All right. And remember, this whole thing is going to be $150 budget. And I'm just going to set a target CPP. All right, let's just say what we really want to hit over here. This is what gives us break even on Ad Manager. The target CPP is going to be $10. All right, that's what we're trying to hit to acquire every single customer. Now, this thing has $150 in daily budget. And each of these things is going to be an ad set. So when do you cut at the ad set level versus when do you cut at the creative level? That's something that gets very, very interesting, right? Because what could have happened, all right, is let's just say this thing spent $50, all right, and its cost per acquisition is actually $10, all right, so it's gotten 5 purchases. This meets the bar. Now let's think this thing, all right, let's just say this thing spent, I don't know, $50 also, and this time the cost per acquisition is 25. All right. And now let's just say this thing has spent $25. All right. And the cost per acquisition is basically no purchase just yet. It's not doing too hot. And also, let's just say that this thing also spent $24. You know, it's gotten a cost purchase of, let's just say $3. You know, it's doing very, very good. And then this thing has only spent $1. That's all that's left. And obviously, it's gotten no purchase. Well, based on this situation, what you might initially do is you might think, hey, well, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this one and cut this one, keep those alive, and bam, these are the cuts I made. But what you don't really know, and this is where CBOs can kind of mess up, and this happens in ABOs sometimes as well, is what creatives we're actually spending. So if we go to the ad set level, all right, and imagine this is the ad set. You've got 3 creatives going on in this thing, right? There's going to be 1, 2, and 3. What if this thing that we don't think is very good, which has spent $50 at the ad set level, and we are ready to cut, right? Because this is not a good cost per purchase. What if out of the $50, creative 1 spent $49, creatives 2 spent $1, and creative 3 spent like 1 cent. And this happens very frequently with CBO. You didn't really give this ad set a solid chance. You gave this creative a solid chance, and this creative, right, satisfied the cutting rule of 3 days and 2 times CPA, right? But none of the other creatives really did. So if you just cut this ad set right away in the CBO, you're not really giving it a good chance to actually perform. So what you might decide to do, and this is what I encourage, especially if you have a little bit more budget to work with and you can take some risks, is you cut this creative, and now you're forcing the rest of this $50 potentially to go into these 2 other creatives and actually give them a fighting chance. So when you see this combination, just be very, very careful that you don't just blanket cut an ad set and you actually see what creatives are spending, all right? And this also happens at the ad set level. So I'm going to go ahead and backtrack. All right, we did a lot of writing. This happens at the ad set level where the CBO might just not allocate good budget across ad sets. So let's just say this ad set in total, it's gotten $75 in spend. And this ad set, it's gotten $25 in spend. And this ad set has gotten $25 in spend. All right. And this thing has gotten, let's just say it's 50. That's $125. This thing has gotten $24 in spend. This thing has only gotten $1 in spend. So you might be thinking, wow, that's really weird. Facebook's algorithm is just never going to spend on ad set 5 ever again unless I shut down the other ones. All right. And $1 just probably isn't a very good way to determine if it's a good asset or not. Think about it, there's 3 creatives in there, right? It's spread $1 across 3 different creatives. That's not very good. So what you can also choose to do is set up something called a minimum spend rule. And this is super easy to do in Facebook Ad Manager. But what you can do now is you can give this ad set or every single ad set a minimum spend. So let's just say our target CPP was at $10. Well, we want everything to spend at least $20. So what you can do is you can set a minimum spend rule for every single ad set to at least spend $20. And now, right, because every ad set will spend $20, your cutting decisions are a lot more accurate. So let's talk about scaling. You know how to cut. So let's just say this thing is that test campaign that we built out, right? Just like before, and we have ad sets 1, 2, 3, 4, and also we've got that broad ad set as well. That's going to be 5. And let's just say after the cuts have been made, all right, you sent the minimum spend, everything is perfectly fine, and this thing is $150 budget, right? That's the budget we gave this thing. So I'll just say you do all of that stuff, 3 days have passed, and you really cut number 5, you cut number 4, and also let's just say you cut number 3, right? And 1 and 2 are pretty profitable. You're ready to scale. And again, scaling is on a 7-day horizon, but over the course of 7 days, you're ready to scale. And why do we do these windows of time for cutting and also scaling? Let me just represent that really quick. It's called the law of large numbers, which means that Facebook is a very volatile advertising platform. And what you might find is that this is going to be time and this is going to be performance, all right? And what you might find is there is an average performance. There's basically a true performance value that is actually happening, right? That is basically the true efficacy of your marketing efforts. Everything from your website and your products to your offer, right? To your targeting, to your creatives. And let's just say that your true value, all right, is this red line over here. And let's just say your true cost per purchase result is actually going to be $10. But why is it good to stretch out things in terms of time windows before you dramatically cut or scale? It's because Facebook is very volatile. What you'll often find is instead of that true performance, Facebook gives you something like this. And if you average it out over time, you imagine this thing getting stretched, yes, it will get to $10. But this is the danger of over-indexing on any positive or negative day. Because let's just say on a particular day, this happened to be your snapshot and your cost per result over here is actually $2. Well, in this situation, you're thinking, oh my God, right? I need to scale to the moon. I need $10 and I am getting 2. It is time to scale, baby. So you up your budget dramatically. Well, guess what? Maybe the next day or in 2 days, this is the snapshot that you get, all right? And this is actually $20. So because you're at a massive budget, you just lost a boatload of money because you really shouldn't have been at that high budget and you really over-indexed, okay? And maybe let's just say your goal this whole time is to actually hit a $8 cost per purchase. So your true performance is pretty bad. But because you over-indexed on this particular day, right? Bam, you just lost a lot of money up here. And the long term, you're also going to lose money because your true performance is actually at $10. And the flip side of this works as well if instead of scaling, you're cutting way too early. So that's why I like those rules of a 3-day cut and a 7-day scale. It's because Facebook is very volatile. So let me backtrack now that you understand that principle. And again, 1 and 2, these are good ad sets. They are ready to scale. And this thing is at a $150 budget. So how do you actually scale? What do you actually do in this situation once you've made some cuts? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to move these 2 ad sets to a new campaign. Not move, you're going to dupe them. You're going to keep them in the old campaign as well. And this one, I'm just going to call it the scaling campaign, right? We're going to make it green for money, green. You can see now, what you're going to do is duplicate these working ad sets by, I'm going to use black, by 3. So you're going to have 3 ad sets of 1, 3 ad sets of 2. All right, and this is a scaling campaign. So what is the budget now of the scaling campaign? Well, what I like to do is I like to dramatically just go over here and duplicate out the budget. So this one will also be $150. So now you have 2 campaigns. You have a campaign that is $150 for scaling and a campaign that's the old one that is still at $150 a day that is kind of your testing, okay? And why did we do this? Why did we duplicate by 3? Well, that's called the shotgun approach. It essentially gives the algorithm more opportunities to find the right pocket within a particular audience. And also, why do we move into a new campaign? Because there's learning at the campaign level. All right. Your learning doesn't only occur at the ad set and creative level. It also occurs at the campaign level. Now you're giving very proven audiences into this scaling campaign, doing that shotgun approach so it has the best odds of success. And now this is how you're going to start scaling. All right. And how much do you scale off this campaign every single week? I recommend increasing budget by 20% a week unless results are absolutely amazing. So I would say if your ROAS is a 3.0 or lower, you stick with that 20% per week rule. If your ROAS is higher than a 3.0, so let's just say it's just 3.1, and this is pretty arbitrary, or higher, I would say, well, let's just do 3.1 to, let's just say a 4.0. You can probably scale by 50% a week until that number starts to drop. And also, if it's 4.0 plus, you probably hit something pretty hot streak, and you can probably scale at, basically 50% plus. You can pretty much get pretty aggressive. And again, this ROAS, these values are based on my previous lessons where I teach you how to price your products from AliExpress, right? So make sure you reference those lessons for this thing to make sense. So that's basically how I like to scale. And again, it might seem a little steady, but keep in mind, if you can scale out this campaign, and we haven't even talked about what we're doing with the original testing campaign, if you can scale this up 20% every single week, you are going to make a lot of money if that scale is profitable. Throughout a year, we're building sustainable performance here. Throughout the year, if you can increase budget by 20% on that campaign every single week throughout a year, you're going to make a lot of money. But simultaneously, while you're doing this scaling campaign, all right, and the same cut rules apply to the scaling campaign, you're adding more interest in that are similar to the ones that worked in the testing campaign. So you're testing even more interest. So let's just say this is still athleisure, and 1 was gym, 2 was gym memes. And if I'm going to use different ones this time, excuse me from the previous examples. So Lululemon, right? And this one is going to be P90X, right? These are all gym related things. I like working out, so I know about this stuff. And then this thing is engaged shoppers, right? Well, you know that gym and gym memes did very, very well. So maybe what you're going to do now is look for more interests that are similar to gym. Maybe different types of gym, like Gold's Gym, right? Or Equinox. Or I'm sure there's other things like gym memes, like maybe there's something like gym life, right? Maybe gym rap. I don't know. But you're picking similar interests to the ones that have worked, and you're adding them in to the testing campaign. And the minimum budget rule still applies depending on how many ad sets you add into that testing campaign. And as new interests work over here, you're doing the same process again, duping by 3 and adding them to the scaling campaign and adjusting that budget accordingly. So you're either meeting that 20% increase per week rule, or you're meeting at least the minimum CBO budget rule in the scaling campaign. And that's what you are doing throughout this process. And again, I didn't talk about retargeting or any of the other things that are important in Facebook ad strategy. This is just the core principle of what we are doing. So now we are ready to move on. Let's just say you got 200 purchase events recorded on Ad Manager. I'm going to clear this canvas again. This is the medium phase. And guess what? The theories to the early phase still apply, except the audiences this time are going to be a little bit different. If you haven't already at this point, what you want to definitely try at the first, so there's going to be a low hanging fruit, right? This is kind of the audiences are lower hanging fruit. Again, this is a CBO. These are the audience. These are the ad sets you're going to plug in. At this point, you already have winning creative, so the creative combinations to start making sense. You're going to try to use purchase 1 to 3%. And again, these are the inclusive ones, okay? So it's going to be 0 to 1, 0 to 2, 0 to 3. You're going to use ATC, 1 through 3%, view content, 1 to 3%, and also initiate checkout, 1 to 3%. So that's 3 of these ad sets per type of audience. 3 times 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3, right? That's going to be 12. So there's 12 total ad sets, and this is where you're going to test at the middle phase. And scaling is going to be the same situation. You're still going to have that scaling campaign, and you can decide, to keep LAAs and interests separate if you want, if interests are absolutely crushing it, or you can mix it all together. That's up to you to test. Again, there's no problem mixing it all together because it's all geographic centric, right? Everything should still be learning at a good pace. But again, remember, if you have too many ad sets, chances are some ad sets are going to get neglected. So the higher number of ad sets that you have, the more you got to rely on those minimum spend rules. And also, this is kind of the more advanced fruit. So if these do very well, or if these have done well for a very long time and things are kind of fatiguing at this point, this is the next batch of audiences that you're going to test. Again, these are just audiences. The structure is still going to be very, very similar from before. Same principles apply. This time you're going to go purchase. All right, 1 through 10%, ATC, 1 through 10%, view content, 1 through 10%, all right, initiate checkout, 1 through 10%. Sorry about that, 1 through 10%. And also you're going to do page view, all right, 1 through 10%. See how we're getting broader and broader. And also you're going to do some sort of page engagement related LAA 1 through 10% as well. And again, this is kind of the more advanced audiences you're going to use. If performance is good on this end, this is kind of the next layer of audiences to use, and that same scaling and testing principles still apply. So this is the final stage. It's called the King Broad CBO, and this was a strategy that I was using long before CBOs were anywhere close to being mandatory. I'm going to show you the simplified version because it is the most easy, intuitive, and also effective one. And again, this is something that you want to use where you have at least 5,000 purchases recorded. So your pixel is pretty seasoned as well. And I'm going to put it right over here. All right. And King Broad CBO. And again, I just want to address something. I know I only talked about the USA and the strategy so far. You're doing the same principles across different countries as well once you get to that point, all right? So if you go on to Generation E, you'll see my foreign audience kind of targeting list. That still applies with CBO. CBOs is just a fine-tuning of different principles, but it's still going to apply in different geographies, right? I'm not going to handhold you guys through this ad strategy every step of the way. You got to use your brain sometimes a little bit as well. So the King Broad CBO is very, very simple. All you got to do is you make a big campaign, and the minimum budget for a King Broad CBO I would recommend starting out with is going to be, honestly, $5,000 on day one. So it's pretty hefty, but again, at this point, your business is obviously very profitable. You shouldn't be wary about taking a few risks here or there. And you're going to have 3 ad sets within the King Broad CPO. And I like how these circles just complete themselves. Super, super awesome. The first ad set is going to be broad, no targeting, all right, except for country, auto placement, USA. And the second one is going to be Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And the third one is going to be worldwide targeting, all right? And you're going to exclude number 1 and number 2 because you obviously don't want this to overlap with everything else. And also, what are the creatives this time in each ad set? They're obviously your most proven creatives. Because it's a $5,000 overall campaign budget, what you can do is just plug in as many winning creatives that you've ever had, right? That isn't too fatigued out. Plug in a bunch of them in there, a lot of different styles, and just let the algorithm go to work. And it's simply that simple. And something I didn't cover in this strategy is manual bidding and kind of some of the more advanced concepts. Again, that's also a principle that you can apply to any of these strategies that I showed you here today. A manual bid just gives you even additional control in kind of spending and how your Facebook ad manager is going out into the Facebook auction to bid on different potential impressions and customers. All right. So that is something you can integrate into this as well. But this is the skeleton of the CBO strategy that I would be using and that I have spent a lot of money testing. All right. But I am not using because ABO is still available to me. And of course, I am still using the King Broad CBO, even though ABO is available for my mature ad accounts. But this sounds super, super simple and it really does work. And now I'm going to show you some of my success in my ad manager because I'm not going to push anything to you guys unless I've tested it myself. So this is one of my Facebook ad managers that I've been using to really do a lot of experimentation on different CBO strategies. You can see it started on March 22nd. Now it's March 31st. It's only been 9 days that I've been doing this testing, and check this out. This is the same type of CBO structure that I just taught you, the testing to scaling, and obviously I have a lot of things turned off because I test so many different things in order to push the right strategies to you guys. You can see I spent $12.5 thousand in exchange for a 3.84 ROAS and $48,000 in conversion value. And also now I'm going to show you the King Broad CBO in action on one of my seasoned ad accounts. So this is one of my mature ad accounts, and you can see here it spent $79,000, all right, and it's gotten us a 2.43 return on ad spend, which is very good for us at this high volume, given the margins that we make for $193,000 in conversion value. And again, this is severely under recording because there's a lot more sales on Shopify. So really this number should be 30% higher. It brings our return on ad spend to close to a 3.0, which is something that absolutely milks money for us. It gives me basically a 20 to 25% take home margin from the top line, which I'm very happy about. And you can see very, very simplified. 3 ad sets in a CBO. It's using a CBO strategy, $79,000 in spend worldwide, Australia, Canada, UK, USA, very broad targeting. And there you have it. That's how you build up your data. If CBOs become mandatory in 2020, that's how you go from testing to scaling, and then finally the King Broad CBO when you are ready for it. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you enjoyed it. A lot of people think I'm crazy for putting this content out there for free. So make sure you press like and subscribe, share it with your friends. I'm on a mission to transform e-commerce education, and I can't do it without you. You can follow my journey at Kevin Zhang Official on Instagram. DM me and I promise I'll respond to every single DM, and join the discussion in my private Facebook group, Generation E. I promise that no question will go unanswered. See you in the next video.